In our last episode, we helped the Bioscience Division of the Institute with their Warwick initiative, but all this time, Father has wanted to speak with us, and so heading back to Father's room, we can see what it is he needs.
Hello, Father. Tell me, what would you do when someone has stolen from you?
After everything I've been through to find you, I think you already know.
I'm sorry, Father. Of course. You're right.
That's a loaded question. What's been stolen from you?
Institute property is not often taken from us. We cannot react lightly when it happens.
I teach the guy a lesson. Make sure he never does it again.
Using physical force is never my first choice. But there are times when it becomes necessary.
I try and talk it out, see if things can be resolved peacefully.
An admirable goal. And yet we find ourselves in a situation where something more significant must be done. The group that calls themselves the Railroad have acquired several synths from the Institute. Synths that had gone missing in recent months. And they no doubt mean to free these synths, in their delusion that synths are somehow sentient beings. You've been in contact with the Railroad, so you're aware of their misguided beliefs.
What happened? What have they done?
They are in possession of technology that does not belong to them.
Railroad? Never heard of them.
Oh, come now. Let's not play games. I know full well they were instrumental in your reaching the Institute. Don't worry. I don't hold it against you.
They're crazy, thinking machines are alive.
Agreed. However noble they may believe themselves to be, they are thieves.
They mean well. They're only doing what they think is right.
You dealt with Libertalia. That's the result of their selfish, short-sighted plan. Usually they are a minor nuisance, but lately they have become more emboldened. I'm afraid we've reached the point where a response is necessary. We have learned the current location of these synths, and need to reacquire them before the Railroad can hide them.
Where are the synths located?
A small settlement at the old Bunker Hill Monument.
I'm not sure why you'd bother.
Aside from taking back our property, we must teach them a lesson, as it were. And quickly at that.
That sounds way too dangerous.
It shouldn't be.
Sounds pretty simple.
Hopefully, yes. But it's important that we act on this soon, before the Railroad has any indication we've tracked them. We also don't want the Brotherhood of Steel getting wind of the presence of the synths. That would only complicate matters.
Is it just me, or will I have backup?
A Corsair will be waiting for you outside Bunker Hill. You'll have support should you need it. But we want to keep this small.
There better be something in this for me.
I assure you, this operation will have very significant results in your favor. There will be a Corsair waiting for you near Bunker Hill. Please find him before barging in.
Seriously, this is a waste of my time.
Like many things at the Institute, this has ramifications beyond the immediate objective. Keep that in mind. A Corsair will be waiting for you near Bunker Hill. You'll need him.
I'll act quickly. You can count on me.
You'll have a contact waiting for you just outside Bunker Hill. Good luck.
And at last, we are beginning to face off with some of the other factions. Now, of course, at this point, we could warn the Brotherhood and the Railroad about what's going on. However, we can only do so after joining those factions. On this playthrough, I'm focusing just on the Institute, so I couldn't warn them, but when we take the Railroad and Brotherhood paths, we'll explore all of those options. For now, we'll just go straight to Bunker Hill. Now, we haven't been to Bunker Hill before. We see a Corsair waiting for us off down a darkened alley. But at the moment, the doors to Bunker Hill are open, and we can head that way to see what the place is like.
You there, caravan or raider?
What?
I said caravan or raider. Which are you?
I really don't understand what you're asking.
Seriously? This is Bunker Hill. All the caravans in the Commonwealth come through here? And every raider outfit in the area gets protection money to keep their paws off the market and our homes. So there's only two types of people coming through here. Caravans and raiders. Which are you?
Caravan!
All right, come on in and set up shop wherever you want. Remember, we get a cut of all your sales. Room and board ain't included.
Raider!
All right, the market's open if you need it. Just remember, the protection we pay your bosses is worth 3 times your life. Leave people alone.
I'm here on my own.
Freelance, huh? All right, come on in, but no gunfire. Market's open. You can do as much trading as you like.
Bunker Hill is a trading town that we've heard about a couple of times. This is one of the towns where we find Deacon spying on us before we meet him. And it's the place where the Minutemen turned raiders at Libertalia tried to get work as caravan guards. But after they felt cheated, they turned to being raiders. There's a marketplace here with a couple of merchants and a couple of quests. But I've covered the quests and interactions here in a previous video. For now, we'll focus on the looming battle. And to do so, we need to head back into that darkened alley to speak with the Courser.
I've been waiting for you.
Watch your tone, Synth.
Next time, move faster.
Yeah, the line at the car wash was super long. Took me forever.
Your attempt at humor is wasted.
So, what's our situation?
I assume you've been briefed?
Sorry to have held you up.
Try and keep up from here out. Our targets are inside, 4 synths under railroad protection. Majority of the settlement is uninvolved and are expected to run for cover. The situation appears to have escalated. A covert approach is likely impossible. We move in, secure the synths, and I relay out with them back to the Institute. Clear?
Should we try and avoid killing anyone?
Irrelevant. Any threats between us and the target are to be eliminated. Only the synths matter.
The Institute would put innocents in danger just to reclaim their synths?
Let's get going already.
Affirmative.
Yeah, we've got this.
Remember, the synths are the primary objective. Harm must be avoided at all costs.
Hey, I'm gonna need some of your grenades. Hand them over.
Negative. You are not authorized to carry them.
But if we pass the charisma check,
Very well. Our targets are being sheltered by a man named Stockton. Here are the recall codes. Follow me. The mission's parameters just changed. We're going shooting. Requesting backup relay now.
and even though we didn't inform the Brotherhood, and we didn't warn the Railroad, both the Brotherhood and the Railroad suddenly appear. Oddly enough, the Minutemen don't make an appearance. You'd think of all of the factions, the Minutemen would be the ones who would come to a settlement's defense. But then again, the Institute, the Railroad, and the Brotherhood aren't attacking this settlement directly. The Institute is here only to retrieve synths, the Railroad is here only to defend those synths, and the Brotherhood is here only to kill those synths. So I suppose that's not enough to get the Minutemen involved. Our stealth mission is now a full-on assault, and after giving the order, the Courser calls in synths to help raid the town. Kessler has closed the door to Bunker Hill, and so we need to find another way inside. Thankfully, there's a wrecked truck just outside the front gate, and leaping upon it, we can use it as a ramp to enter the town. There's also another door on the eastern side of Bunker Hill. This door is open, so we could come this way if we want to, but the Brotherhood tried to storm through here as well, making it tricky to get in. Inside, we find the Railroad already here, and there are a lot of Railroad agents here. Dozens of them, which is strange from a lore perspective because, as we learned during the quest Tradecraft, the Railroad has been thinned out by the Institute. They lost most of their members at the switchboard. Now they have only a few agents left, and yet during this battle, dozens of them arrived to protect the synths. One wonders where they came from and where they go after this quest ends. They fire upon us indiscriminately. Perhaps they don't know who we are. And indeed, had we completed the quest Tradecraft, which I covered in this series, but this character hasn't completed yet, they wouldn't fire upon us, because had we completed Tradecraft, we would be known to the Railroad, and in fact, be allied with them. A Brotherhood vertibird drops down Brotherhood Knights into the middle of the town. The Brotherhood doesn't attack us. This character has not completed Shadow of Steel yet, and we haven't officially joined the Brotherhood, but we did help out Dance back at the Cambridge police station, and so perhaps because of that, the Brotherhood recognizes us and doesn't fire. And the Institute teleports synths inside too. The merchants and people who live here have all fled for cover, but every now and then, a Railroad or Brotherhood bullet will graze a caravan guard, and these guards will turn hostile to them. However, the guards are immortal unless we kill them ourselves, and so we'll find Railroad agents and Brotherhood soldiers perpetually fighting these guards. We have to be careful that we don't mistake them for enemy combatants, because if we do, we could turn the entire town hostile. It's a free-for-all. Railroad agents fighting Brotherhood Knights fighting synths, synths fighting Railroad agents. It's a great opportunity to loot pretty awesome weapons like Gauss rifles and armored coats from the Railroad, miniguns and Gatling lasers from the Brotherhood. Of course, it's possible to skip the fight entirely. If we had joined both the Brotherhood and the Railroad before doing this quest, we would arrive at Bunker Hill to find nobody attacking us. They would be attacking each other, but we could just waltz in unscathed. Or, of course, we could stealth in, let them fight each other, and then loot the bodies afterwards. At any rate, while the battle rages on in town, we have a mission. We need to find these synths. Inside the marketplace is a hatch on the ground behind one of the counters. This leads to a utility basement. Climbing down, we arrive in a hallway and we hear sounds of gunfire coming from an adjacent room. Moving down the hallway, we turn right through a door and into a large open space. Here the Brotherhood is fighting the Railroad, and our Institute synths teleport in to join the battle. Again, like topside, the Brotherhood Knights ignore us. We haven't really done anything to anger them yet, but the Railroad agents are hostile. We've got quite a fight on our hands. Despite the Brotherhood ignoring us, they don't ignore the synths who teleport in, so we can leave them to fight while we move on to find the synths. Heading up a ramp, we move into a room guarded by a Railroad heavy. This room opens up into a hallway that climbs stairs where we find more Railroad agents.
You killed him!
Exiting onto a catwalk, we climb stairs to arrive at a floating pod guarded with machine gun turrets and more Railroad heavies. This pod leads to a hallway that goes down some stairs until we arrive in a basement filled with synths. Our courser friend comes in behind us.
Here they are.
God, it's a courser!
Oh no!
Issue the reset codes and we'll relay back to the Institute. Time is critical.
When we were talking with him outside the town, he gave us a note containing all of the recall codes. Synth recall codes B257, Theta 93 Stratus, Y915, Beta 77 Tempest, Z322, Gamma 49 Typhoon, F633, Delta 62 Arcus. We'll start with F633.
I've been looking for you.
No, I've got money. It's yours if you let me go.
What's this about money?
Yes, money. Here. 60 caps. That's all I've got. We're good, right?
Got any more on you?
What? No. I told you. That was all I had.
We find three options. We could tell him he's free to go.
You're safe, okay? I'm gonna let you go.
Oh, God, thank you. I cannot allow you to set these synths free. You will be terminated and your actions will be reported.
In which case, X418, our courser companion, turns hostile, and we now have to kill him. This, of course, has dramatic implications back at the Institute. But this is the path we would take when siding with the Railroad, and so we're not going to cover it here. Though of note, this courser did not have a synth component on his body. Yet again, we find a synth without a synth component. Or we could choose violence.
I'm putting you down.
No! Synths are to be returned to the Institute, not terminated. Further hostilities will necessitate a response. You have been warned.
If we kill another,
Further violence against synths will not be permitted.
X418 turns hostile. This option is probably what the Brotherhood would have wanted, but as we are siding with the Institute, we will instead issue the reset code.
F633, initiate reset. Authorization code Delta 62 Arcus.
And the synth deactivates. Speaking with Z322,
All right, Synth.
Please!
Why don't you want to go back?
I don't know. I wanted my own life, I guess.
again we find the same three options that we had with the last synth, and we already know their outcomes, so we'll issue the reset code.
Z322, initiate reset. Authorization code Gamma 49 Typhoon.
And he deactivates. Next, we can talk to B257.
You there, Synth.
Come on, please. Just don't.
Why are you so afraid?
I don't want to go back. Please, don't make me go back.
B257, initiate reset. Authorization code Theta 93 Stratus.
And finally, we can talk to Y915.
No sudden moves.
Please, no.
What's so bad about the Institute?
I couldn't take it anymore.
Y915, initiate reset. Authorization code Beta 77 Tempest.
That's all of them. Objective complete. Return to the town. Make sure all hostiles have been eliminated. I will relay the synths back to the Institute. Report to Father upon your return, and good work.
With that, X418 and the remaining synths are relayed back to the Institute. Heading back up the stairs, we can loot the bodies. And as I said earlier, this is one of the richest rewards we get in the game. Dozens of weapons that we can either use or scrap, buckets of ammunition, the railroad's armored coats, which are otherwise pretty tricky to get. It's honestly so much loot that we're unlikely to be able to bring it all back to town, unless we store it all in a container here in Bunker Hill and make a couple of trips. With the basement looted as well as we can climb back out and open the hatch back to Bunker Hill. We find the battle still raging, but things are beginning to wind down. We could join in to finish off the combatants, or just hightail it out of here. With Bunker Hill cleared and looted, we now need to go talk with Father. The Courser didn't tell us where he would be, and Father's not at the Institute. He's waiting for us in the CIT ruins. That would have been nice to know. We were last here when trying to track down the Courser at Green Tech Genetics. We briefly went inside to find super mutants fighting synths. It's a small place, and now's a good opportunity to explore it while trying to find Father. Just outside, we find a security pod with a first aid kit inside and a couple of containers. Then, we can head towards the columns to enter the CIT Rotunda.
What's that?
Upon arrival, we hear super mutants fighting synths. But we don't have a clear shot, so we'll creep around cautiously for now. There is a giant statue in the middle of the rotunda. Moving north beyond it, we find a couple of doors on the opposite side of the rotunda. Heading outside, we find ourselves looking at downtown Cambridge. This is just another entrance into the ruins of CIT. Back inside, we can turn east from the rotunda. We see a staircase going up, but before heading that way, we'll explore this hallway to the east. The bathrooms are to the left, men's first, women's after it. Nothing much here, but for the skeleton of a woman, head first in the toilet. Ugh. Back to the hallway, we find a broom closet to the left, it's empty. Then heading up some stairs, we find a lightly furnished landing, and we continue to follow the staircase past some lockers, all the way to a door that leads to the rooftop of the Commonwealth Institute of Technology. Well, before we head to the roof, let's finish exploring this place. Heading back downstairs, we can now scale that staircase that we passed earlier. This leads to the second floor, and a balcony overlooking the rotunda. Here we can loot the bodies of the super mutants that the synths had killed. Following the hallway all around the rotunda, we find a duffel bag with loot inside, and along the way we can loot a couple of dead synths. This balcony moves west into a break room, where we see a synth body from the floor above, clipping down below. From the break room, we find a staircase leading up and a door to the right of a water cooler. The door leads to a small office. There's no loot here. So back out to the break room, we can take the staircase up to the next floor. And here we find the cafeteria. Looks like the Institute is the last man standing. There is at least one synth still alive, and all the super mutants are dead. There's not a lot of loot here, but tons of pre-war propaganda posters on the wall. We find a porta-diner here. We can try our luck. No dice. The cafeteria leads to a hallway that splits left or right. Moving left first, we loot more synth bodies. We find a pre-war skeleton dangling over this balcony. Then moving right, we can loot some super mutants. We find a schoolroom here with an end-of-dungeon steamer trunk on top of a teacher's desk and an advanced locked wall safe behind her. In the safe is a bunch of ammunition. Out of the teacher's room, we can turn right to loot more bodies along the way. This hallway rounds a pillar where we pass some lockers on either side and eventually brings us right back to where we were. And that's it for the upper levels of CIT. Taking a nearby staircase down to the ground floor, we can explore the western side of the ruins. After passing the rotunda, we arrive at a long foyer. There's a cooler on a table next to a copy of Blast Radius, and 2 big double doors leading back outside to Cambridge. This is a side entrance leading to an alleyway that must have been used for deliveries. All we find back here are trash cans. Heading back inside, we turn right to finish exploring. There's an ammo box on a console table, an empty Nuka-Cola machine, and a janitor skeleton on the ground. There's chalk on a table next to the skeleton, and the last thing he drew on the chalkboard was... I don't know. It's a symbol of some sort, like light through a prism, maybe? I didn't get the reference because I've never seen the movie, but followers on Twitter clued me into the fact that this is likely a reference to the movie Good Will Hunting, the story about a janitor who is secretly a mathematical savant solves a complicated math problem on a chalkboard. Good Will Hunting is set at MIT in Boston, and this chalkboard is inside the CIT in Boston. There is a door here leading outside as well, and this leads to the side entrance of CIT near to a southern bridge leading towards Boston. But heading back in, we can try to find that staircase leading up to the roof, because that's it for the CIT. At the top of the staircase, we can open the door to arrive on the roof. It commands great views of Cambridge, and we can see the Boston skyline off in the distance, and here at last, we find Father taking in the view. Now, of course, this conversation goes very differently if we fail our task at Bunker Hill, if we free the synths, or if we kill them. That version of the conversation could lead to our expulsion from the Institute, but we'll tackle that later when telling the stories of the Brotherhood and the Railroad.
You know, in all my years, I've never set foot outside the Institute. Not once. Since the day they brought me here. I've never had a reason. But now, this just confirms the truth I've always known. The Commonwealth is dead. There's no future here. The only hope for humanity lies below.
So why come out here?
To put things in perspective, I suppose.
Some air fresheners, a new coat of paint, and it'll all be good as new.
If only it were that simple.
It wasn't always like this. It used to be different.
I can only imagine.
It's not so bad, really. People manage.
Perhaps. But at a cost too great to be worth it. Standing here, I'm reminded of how fortunate I am that I was spared a life in this wasteland. I know that to you, I was kidnapped from that vault. In truth, the Institute rescued me. Both of us, really.
But why refreeze me?
As a failsafe, of course.
Kellogg called me the backup.
Did he? Well, he was correct.
They left me on ice. For 60 years.
They did. And for good reason.
They kept me alive, too.
They did, indeed. I was the perfect candidate. An infant with uncorrupted DNA. But if something were to go wrong, if I died, well, the Institute realized a contingency plan was prudent. Another source of pre-war DNA, preferably related to their primary subject. It only made sense that my parents should fill that role. So you were kept alive and safe within the vault. I'll admit, when I had you released from Vault 111, I had no expectations that you'd survive out here in all this. To not only do so, but manage to find me. To infiltrate the Institute itself. Extraordinary.
Your unconditional love is overwhelming. I think I need a moment.
I can accept that you're offended. You must understand, though. I have had no love to feel. We have been strangers until now, you and I.
Why let me out now? After all this time?
That's hard to explain.
You could have let me out decades ago.
Until I became director, I had no idea you were there. And after, there was initially no logical reason to do so.
So it was you. You let me out.
Yes. It was my decision. Certainly it was no longer necessary to keep you suspended. Well, I suppose I wanted to see what would happen. An experiment of sorts. I had no idea what kind of man you were, you see. Would the Commonwealth corrupt you? As it has everything else. Would you even survive? Perhaps most curious to me, would you, after all this time, attempt to find me? And now I know the answer.
Well, here I am. Was it worth it?
I believe so.
This is science to you? It's pathetic, all of it.
I'm sorry you see it that way. Perhaps in time you'll see it differently.
That's all this is to you? All I am to you? Just another experiment?
No, that's not all. But still, I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
Sean, you need to know. I still love you.
I can see that you do. It's remarkable. There are greater things to come after your success at Bunker Hill. The synths have been safely returned and will be repurposed. Thank you for your work. I hope you weren't at too much risk.
What do you mean, the synths will be repurposed?
Modifications will be made to correct the defects in their programming, and they'll be assigned to new duties within the Institute. Not the first or last time it will happen.
It was a job that needed doing.
Yes, but it was also a job that you needed to be aware of.
The Courser could have handled it on his own. It was a waste of my time.
I disagree. It's important that you understand the work that is necessary to maintain the Institute.
There's always a risk. It was worth it.
I'm glad you see it that way. The railroad remains an annoyance, of course. But they'll be dealt with as necessary. And you, well, you've passed the test, as they say. You have done well. Please, take this as a token of my appreciation. Our appreciation, really. It's time for you to become more involved in the future of the Institute. I'd like you to join me inside. The Directorate is meeting, and you should be there. I'll be waiting. I've seen enough. It's time to go back in.
With that, we complete the quest, The Battle for Bunker Hill, and begin the quest, Mankind Redefined. This conversation, I think, more than any other, tells us how and why the Institute came to kidnap Sean and murder Nora, and shows us Sean's own personal involvement in this process. We just learned that the Institute was responsible for refreezing Nate. But then that means they're also responsible for not refreezing the other inhabitants of Vault 111, which means the Institute killed them. When we were exploring Vault 111, Nate was horrified to learn that he was the only one left alive.
Can't be the only one left. Hello? Anyone?
Kellogg murdered Nora with a weapon, and the Institute murdered everyone else by turning off life support to their pods. Everyone except for Nate. They needed to keep Nate alive because he shared DNA with Sean, which I think starkly highlights the hypocrisy of the Institute. When we bring up what Kellogg did to Nora, to Father, to Allie Fillmore, they express regret. One might even say they express outrage.
Kellogg. It wasn't until I became director that I learned of all the things he'd done. What kind of man he was. Believe me, I am well aware of the atrocities Kellogg committed. I suspect there are many more we'll never know of. I, for one, will never truly forgive him.
Kellogg always was a cold bastard. If you ask me, we're better off without him.
Kellogg was a monster. Father will never forgive him. Allie thinks the Institute is better off without him. But Kellogg only murdered one person in Vault 111. The Institute murdered half a dozen. Not from malice, not from rage, but simply because they just didn't care. They saw these people as scientific assets, not human beings, and if they couldn't be used for science, their lives didn't matter. But it seems odd that the Institute would leave only one backup. The whole point of this experiment was to get pre-war DNA that had been uncorrupted by mutated FEV in the atmosphere that they could use as a foundation for their biological synth. If something happened to Sean, they had Nate. Great. But what if something happened to Nate? Well, they had a vault filled with more frozen people. But instead of keeping those as backups as well, they chose to kill them all. An odd choice. And we learned that it was Father himself who released Nate from Vault 111.
So it was you. You let me out.
Yes. It was my decision.
60 years after he was kidnapped as a baby, Sean decided to release his parent from the vault. And astonishingly, he admits that he didn't think Nate would survive in the wasteland.
I had no expectations that you'd survive out here.
He was knowingly releasing Nate into a wasteland thinking he would die. And he did this, placing his father in harm's way, expecting his father to die for no other reason than that he wanted to see what would happen.
Well, I suppose I wanted to see what would happen.
Astounding. But he tells us why. It's because he was never raised with love. He's not familiar with that emotion.
I have had no love to feel.
Arguably the greatest horror that the Institute did to Nate and Nora's family was to rob their child of familial love, producing an adult that didn't understand the concept. There's a word for a mental disorder in a person who doesn't understand love, doesn't show regard for the feelings of others, someone who acts impulsively, like releasing a parent out into a wasteland at the ripe old age of 60 just to see what would happen. And that word is sociopath. He ended by saying that we've passed the test, and that's because our choices at the battle for Bunker Hill are really points of no return for continuing to work with the Institute unless we can pass some very difficult charisma checks. If we head back to Bunker Hill, we find the doors open again, but there are signs of the battle everywhere. If we arrive soon enough, we can still find weapons lying about. Even some bodies that we haven't looted yet remain, and we can talk with Kessler.
Hey there.
Listen, Bunker Hill doesn't want any trouble. You have some seriously powerful friends. If it'll keep us on their good side, consider yourself to have the run of the place. And the next time you need something, just ask, all right?
Damage aside, the fact that the monument still stands is a testament to human architecture.
Regardless of the faction we sided with during this quest, we gain Bunker Hill as a settlement. This isn't the only way to get Bunker Hill as a settlement. We could complete some of the side quests in Bunker Hill to get them to join the Minutemen, and we get it as a settlement that way. Now, we need to head back to the Institute to attend a directorate meeting. I guess this means Father really trusts us if we're going to be meeting with the directorate. We'll tackle the meeting in our next episode. I publish new Fallout videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss that episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in another way, consider giving me a super thanks on this video. Your super thanks directly contribute to the continuation of this series. You could also support me as a patron on Patreon or become a YouTube member. YouTube members get little badges that appear next to their names in the comment sections of my videos and access to Ox emojis that they can use in the video comments and in the live chats of my live streams. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with the next episode in the full story of Fallout 4.
Got it.